Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
How are you doing this evening?
Great.
Oh, come on now. Your enthusiasm is overwhelming. Please. How are you doing?
Yes.
Have you enjoyed the previous speakers?
Yes.
Yeah, especially you, Sophie, my dear. Hats off to you, my dear.
Thank you.
I've got a beautiful friend who's only 13 years of age who had his hip removed because he found bone cancer. My best friend, one of my oldest friends, who's been friends with for 44 years. How many of you got a friend who's been friends for 44 years? 44 years, wow, you count yourself as rich, right, like me. And my son, my friend's son, he found bone cancer and had to remove his whole hip. So every 2 or 3 years now, he'll have to have a new titanium hip put in because as he grows. And he had a fascinating experience, which perhaps if I get time, I'll share that story with you. But I'm not here to share that story here tonight. There seems to be a theme here this evening. I was speaking to my friend Jason and my friend Jim. And they were telling me that there's a little bit of a theme here. I came in a little bit late because I was having a meeting upstairs. As my beautiful friend Shay says, I've been here many times. I've supported this event since the very beginning. I think this is the 4th time I've spoken here. One of those times you very kindly let me promote the Basket Brigade, yes, which is something we run every Christmas, where we feed people in London who can't feed themselves for Christmas. And but I'm not here to talk about that either. So, how many of you here tonight are looking for more in your life? Raise your hand if you're looking for more. Alright, good. So I'm a little bit shocked. You didn't put your hand up. So your name is, sorry again?
Daisy.
Daisy, you didn't have your hand up, nor did you. And there's a few others of you didn't have your hand up. You're not looking for more?
No, I'm content.
You're content?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's a myth. Let me tell you why that's a myth. You have bought into a paradigm wholeheartedly because the soul's desire is to express and live life at the highest level from your greatest truth, as my friend Sophie just said, coming from your most noble truth. And the soul's paradigm on this earth, the soul's experience on this earth, your spiritual curriculum is to live a full life. So when you say I'm content and I don't want more, and I ask this question all around the world, I've been asking this question for 18 years now, in boardrooms, in Zulu huts in Africa, in school classrooms, in universities all around the world. I always ask the same question, how many of you want more? And you always get about 20% of the room who put their hand up, and 80% don't. Why? Because most people have bought into the paradigm that it's not good to want more. There's something wrong with wanting more. When actually your soul is here to express life at the highest level. So when you say you're content, and I apologize for using you as an example, but it's a good example. Considering that you actually said I'm content, it's an example for all of us. Because there's no such thing as being content. There is being fulfilled. Make no mistake now, listen, hear me clearly now, right? There is being fulfilled, and there's being driven. And your job on this earth is to match the two. You can have mental constructs, and it's very important to have a mental construct. And a mental construct gives you the ability to achieve goals. And you need mental constructs to achieve goals. You need emotional juice to make those goals real. You need desire to make that happen. However, you also have to be fulfilled. But there is no such thing as contentment, because the soul doesn't know what contentment is. Because the soul here is to experience life at the highest level. Now the challenge for all of us here when we arrive on this earth is that we are a spiritual being that gets manifested into this physical fetus and then has this 9-month gestation period in the womb, the mother's womb, and then gets birthed. And then when the child comes out, it's a spiritual being in a tiny little body. Now I want you just to imagine what this is like for a few seconds, if you could. Imagine the universe's fantastic power, the universe's magnitude of energy, condensed into a tiny little body which is about this big. I remember my kids when they were this big, their skinny little arms flapping all over the place. When my son was born, my daughter was born, tiny, that big. Imagine that universal energy all condensed in that tiny little body. And then when that body starts to grow, and that body starts to absorb its environment through its eyes and its ears, and it starts to touch things and put things in its mouth, and starts to feel the world around it, what does it start hearing immediately? Don't do that! No! Shh, don't talk. Children should be seen and not heard, as I heard in South Africa, all of my youth. And then you get into the schooling curriculum, and what do you learn then? Then you learn about punishment and reward. If you're good, you get A's and golds, stars. But if you're not first, nobody even talks about you, right? You didn't make it. And you learn about punishment and reward. And if you do something outside of the curriculum, or if you do something outside of the paradigm or outside of the box, what do you get told? You get scolded. You get punished. If you were like me when I grew up in South Africa, we got caned with a big bamboo stick. And the people that were caning us were monks. They used to wear these long habits with these big crucifixes around their neck. And they caned us, walked around with these sticks all the time and caned us on the back of the legs. if we're doing anything that they thought was wrong, which could have been just talking to your friend in the corridor, or not being in the class on time, or going to the toilet at the wrong time. So you learn about punishment and reward, and you've all learned about this, and you start learning this from your parents at the earliest age. In fact, this even happens when you're 6 months of age and you're lying in your cot. You won't remember this, a lot of you, because you've suppressed it. But at 6 months of age, a lot of you lay in your cot and you screamed your lungs out. And your mother was so exhausted that she said, I'm going to let you cry, you can cry yourself to sleep, because I'm exhausted. And you could hear your mother in the kitchen saying, making a noise, the pots and the pans, and you used to lie in your cot and say, why doesn't mother hear me? Can't she hear me screaming? Why doesn't she come? Doesn't she love me? Why doesn't anybody want me? This is what children start deciding at the age of 6, 9, 12, 18 months of age. Research shows this is proven now in scientific labs where they prove this point, where they get parents to walk past a glass panel so the child can see them for a split second in time, and the physical reaction in the body, the chemical reaction in the body is noticeable, but they can see it on a graph. This is when children start learning immediately about what it is to be unconditionally loved or conditionally loved. We think we know about unconditional love. How many of you know what unconditional love is? How many of you actually know what it is? In other words, you activate it every day. You actually practice it every day. Very good. I'd like to take a bet on you with that. Because conditional love is something that we do by nurture. We get nurtured into conditional love. By nature, you have, think about this, you've got access to 3 minds. There's actually access to universal mind, right? Which is the mind at the highest level, which is God mind. But then you have the conscious mind, which is what you use every single day when you send text messages, when you reply to email posts, when you look at Facebook messages, when you make Facebook posts, etc. That's your conscious mind at play. And your conscious mind is creative by nature. Creative by nature. But critical by nurture. Because since the earliest time you were taught to be critical. Critical of yourself and critical of other people. Because you learned it from your parents. And you learned it from the environment you grew up in. You learned it from your teachers, your siblings, your uncles, your aunts, everybody. Most people are critical. Because they've learned to be critical. Because they were taught to be critical when they were younger. So they're passing down a model to you. Nobody's fault. Nobody's wrong. Nobody's doing anything wrong here. This is just how it is. And so what happens is you learn to be critical by nurture. But by nature, you're creative. But what happens is from the earliest time, when you start getting told things like stop daydreaming, put your head in a book. How many of you heard that when you were young? I heard that a lot. I was a dreamer. And I heard that a lot. Stop dreaming, son, put your head in a book. And as soon as you start hearing these kinds of things when you're young, your creative mind starts going to sleep. Your imagination starts losing its effectiveness, starts losing its power. And now as an adult, you use your imagination every day, all day long. The only problem is you worry about stuff that's not going to show up yet. You worry about things that may go wrong. You worry about the fact that money might not come in. You may not get that prospect. You may not get that client. You might not get that business. You might not get that property. You might not get that opportunity. Raise your hand if you relate to this. Thank you. If you don't have your hand up now, there's something wrong with your shoulders, or you lie about other stuff too. Because we all do this, right? We all do this. So let me tell you, the first step to making a change. How many of you want to change your life in amazing ways? Raise your hand if that's you.
Yes.
Okay, good. If that doesn't excite you, I'm worried. Some of you still didn't put your hand up. I need to walk around and check your pulse. So, listen, the reason I ask you this question is because I'm enthusiastic about life. I love people. I work with people at all ages, in all kinds of demographics. I've worked with mothers who have watched their kids get murdered in Africa. I've worked with mothers who have watched their children get raped in Africa. I've worked with ex-police personnel who killed people because they were told to do it. I've worked with military personnel who have done the same thing. One of my toughest clients that I worked with for the longest time was exactly that kind of person who went to the military against his own will. It was conscription, and he was offered an option, a choice. They said to him, you can either go to the military for 2 years or you can go to prison for 2 years. Which one would you like? How many of you would have chosen prison? I'm curious. Interesting. Well, interesting. At 18 years of age, most people say they would have chosen prison. I've met very few people who actually chose prison when the time came. When the time actually came. Very few. 3 actually. 3 people have chose prison when the time came. Most people say, yeah, I would choose prison. It's easy to say that when you're 20 years older. So this kid went in conscription into the army and served all over Africa, and then ended up in Angola and killed hundreds of people with his patrol mortar pipe and his RPG-7 rocket launcher. That client was me. 7 months in Angola. My friend bled out right in front of me while I gave him a blood transfusion. The back of his head was missing. And he was bleeding out on the floor in front of me. The flies were all over his face. And I waved the flies off his face and I said, please God, don't die. Please don't let him die. Please don't let him die. Please God, get me home alive. That was my first combat. Lasted 2 minutes. In that same combat, I watched 2 of my friends explode right in front of me into dust. Their blood splattered all over the place. And I had 7 months of that every other day. And then I came out of that, and luckily, by God's saving grace, I bumped into a friend of mine who was on the same operation, who flew into Angola on a helicopter and landed in the middle of the war zone, and they threw body bags onto the helicopter, and bodies, missing limbs, with blood bags dripping into their skin, dripping into their veins, and flew them back to one military hospital in Pretoria, and then they flew back again, and they did that for 7 months. One of my buddies was on that chopper, and I bumped into him in the street 14 days after I had been released. 6 months later, I was still drinking myself into the bottom of a bottle because I had nightmares for 7 years and post-traumatic stress for 9 years. And 6 months later, I bumped into him again, and he said, come up to my flat. We need to get you involved in psychology. I said, what's psychology? He said, it's how your brain works. And he introduced me to psychology. 30 years later, this July, 30 years later, from the time I read my first book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, it's 30 years later. I've studied anthropology, philosophy, psychology, religion, spirituality, science, neurology, you name it, I've studied it. I'm a walking encyclopedia. I get paid big bucks to travel around the world. I've been speaking for 18 years, and I'm here to leave one simple message with you, my friends. You standing close to me now tells me that I must be nearly finished. Is that right? My message for you here, my friends, is to heal the little boy inside of you, to heal the little girl inside of you. Because I can guarantee you now you haven't healed that little child. Because that little child has been waiting to hear the things that you need to say to it. You need to absolve your parents of that responsibility from this moment forward. Some of you have been waiting for your parents to tell you those things since you were 3, and they're never going to tell you that because they don't know how to do it. So you need to absolve them of that responsibility, and you need to give it to yourself. That means looking in the mirror every single day and saying, hey, I love you. I thank you. I appreciate you. I know you're working hard. I know you're on the way. Everything's working out for you. Hang in there. The universe has got your back. I've got your back. I'm your loving parent. I'm your greatest champion. I'm your greatest fan. That's where self-confidence starts, my friend. Self-confidence, as my friend Joe just said just now, is about self-trust. If you can't trust yourself to put your hand up when somebody says, how many of you want more? You need to go to work. Thank you for listening, my friends.
Thank you.